Welcome, and welcome to our Right Way business broadcast and podcast over all the social media platforms: LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and also Facebook as well. It's great to have you all here today. It's again, all these broadcasts, tend to have their issues when you're live. And this one has no other issues as well, but it's great to have you all. We've got so much to pack in today. The whole subject area of sales and feast and famine and the whole impact it has on business. And we're going to be talking about that today. So we have a number of guests that I want to share with you on the panel today. And before I do that, I think Oliver is still struggling to get to us. He's had a bit of an emergency, been a good Samaritan to somebody in the street, would you believe? I mean, I'm not making this up, folks. I'm not making this up. And as a result, he's just been hanging around waiting for the police and the ambulance to serve that person. So he says he's just on the call. Hopefully, he should be online shortly. But obviously, we've got Daniel with us, and I'll introduce him shortly as well. Anyway, but good to have you. Straight into what we're trying to achieve today in relation to the business. And let me just go back in relation to the whole process of what we're trying to do today. So first of all, some introductions, and we're going to have some discussions, obviously clearly around stuff, and then some Q&A, hopefully in relation to some of the questions that you may have. And on that front, I'm trying to hold the questions to the end. I mean, if there's any pertinent questions, then let us know. As you know, we have a chat feature as well that we can pick up all the things that you may say from all the social media platforms that you may be on at this moment in time. So just put some information in the chat, or just give us a tinkle that we know that you're there, and we'll be able to obviously answer any questions that you may have as we go along the discussion as well. So that's the sort of direction of travel today. Those of you who don't know me, and I'm sure you do anyway, that's where we are in terms of aspects. We do a lot of work within the business community and helping organizations grow. And as a result of that, some people do really well through our intervention. And we've got a wall of honor on our board as well. And so it's good to have those people who've really made a difference in their business and seen the realization of their dreams as well. So much to do. What I want to do, I want to just share a little bit about where we're going today, and I want to just share this little model that we use with our clients. Daniel knows this really pretty well, and it's something that we always use with our clients when we do our sort of vision away days, and it helps to really set the scene for what we're going to be talking about in terms of the whole aspect of sales as well. So the first aspect is on the top. It says, we're reviewing why do you exist? What is the customer pain? And for me, that is super important, because every business, if you're not meeting the needs of your customer, it doesn't matter how big you are, how relevant you are, etc., that you may think in your eyes, you can potentially go bust. Once you lose the elements of not being close to your customers, meeting the needs of your customers, it doesn't matter what you do, you lose that. And we've seen that with, the big businesses, whether you're Woolworths, Blockbuster, whatever it is. If you're not relevant to your customers, eventually it catches up with you and you go bust. And then refining that value proposition, we'll talk about that as well as we go through our discussions, and ensuring that all goes for the organization, and then reviewing performance. But it's that first two parts I want us to really focus on today, because they're the foundation of what we're trying to look at, and how we can create a sustainable business based on sales, which fulfills what your purpose and what you're trying to do to meet the needs of customers going forward. But let me introduce you to our guests, if you don't mind. I want to do that. First of all, I want to introduce Daniel to the table, and welcome, Daniel. I hope you are well. And Daniel Jin has been at the helm of running and building a multitude of businesses since 1998, I think it is.
98, yeah, that's right. 26 years.
And the flagship business, which he currently is working with at the moment, which he's founded with his wife Jo, is Creation. And Creation works with pharmaceutical businesses, including the top 10, to become a multi-million-dollar entity servicing clients on a global basis. In his spare time, he does a whole load of things, including have an Olympic gymnast on his hands, and but also overseeing Worship Works, a not-for-profit entity, raising young people to serve as Christians faithfully, bringing hope and light in the marketplace. And Dan is married to Joe, has 3 children, a cat, a dog. I can't believe this. 28 fish and 160,000 bees. Is that correct?
The bees are on a bit of a downer at the moment, so they might be down a little bit, but yeah.
The man's officially a beekeeper, bless him. Anyway, good to welcome you, Daniel, and good to have you on the show as well. And oh my gosh, he is in the house. Oliver,
finally.
Bless you. Doing your Good Samaritan venture, so well done for you. I just told the folks that you may be a little bit late, but it's great to have you on the line as well. And Oliver is the founder and director of Reed Consultancy, whose business helps companies to create tools to sell effectively and ethically. And Oliver's 20 years sales experience in sectors such as IT hardware, information security, working with startups who are VC funded, trading firms, building desks and businesses from scratch, 4 years in recruitment as well. And more importantly, and this is where he comes and brings real value, he has real sales international experience with 8 years in coaching and teaching in Hong Kong, Australia, China, Pakistan, UK, and now on the podcast today.
Thank you for that intro.
What do you do in your spare time, man? I mean, you have oh my gosh.
When I have spare time, it's either the gym or kickboxing or some sorts. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you both being on the call as well. So I'm going to kick off. I know we're just running a few minutes late, so my apologies for the intro anyway. But thank you, folks, for coming on board. And there's a number of questions I want to just pose to you guys as experts, really. And we're talking about obviously the whole element of sales and the fact that the foundation it provides to business. But as a first question, why do business leaders struggle with the whole concept of sales, even though they know it's important? What's your feeling when you speak to others in the marketplace in relation to their value of sales, even though they know it's important? But why do leaders struggle? What's your view? And Daniel, if you want to kick off there.
Okay, great. I think that's a really great question, and I think that do business leaders struggle with the whole concept of sales? I think that I think sometimes I've come across that and I've seen it and I've experienced it as well. At times. Okay, I think of two things. One is that I think that if you think about a business leader who's a founder, an entrepreneur who's maybe founded a business, they maybe didn't found it to sell. They had an idea. In my journey, it was about using technology to really change the world. I believe the internet was about to come and change all our lives in a huge way back in the late 90s, and I was super excited about that. So my background was technology. That was where my real skills were, building tech and taking it to people. And I loved interacting with people. And of course, I was incredibly passionate about what we were doing, but I didn't really have any specific sales skills. So, my passion didn't always necessarily relate to the specific need of the buyer. And I think I had to learn a lot of things about how to hone that and how to sell effectively. So I think that's one thing, is that for some business leaders, their passion for what they're doing might sort of overshadow the practical sales conversation. But I also think that something I see around me when I talk to people about selling is that I often find people think that they say selling as, of course, you have to sell to be in business. And that's as far as it goes. So it's a kind of necessary evil thing that needs to happen. It's like, we've got to do this thing to stay in business. The business is, instead of saying, like, what I've come to see over the years is sales is like, that is the most effective way we can serve a customer, right? It's before we even sell to them. If we want to serve customers well, serve them right the way through that journey, and actually change the way you see sales as a massive opportunity to build great relationships, to serve well, to change the world around you. I think most people in business want to make a genuine impact in the world, and the best way you can make that is before you even sell to someone. How you sell, and I think it's that changing your mind about what sales is. See it as a joy, as something that you can actually bring joy and goodness to people through. I think that that changes it. I think some people that's sometimes the struggle that people have is a sense that like I've got to sell, right? You know, it's almost like I beat myself up with this thing about I've got to sell instead of bringing joy to it. I don't know. What do you think, Oliver?
I agree with quite a lot of what you say, and I would say the secret in selling is what you've actually just said. So when I'm coaching, in order to get the sale through, it's not just hitting a key KPI or a target. It's wanting to help. It's wanting to improve someone's life. That's where the key secret to sales actually is. It's not just picking up the phone, getting in front of them, and pushing a product or service. It's the wanting to. And I would say it's a lot more draining. It uses a lot more energy, but the whole user experience throughout the process is then I wouldn't say that it's appreciated, because then you don't just partner up with a prospect or a client. You get to understand them as an individual plus their business and pains. But going back to the initial question, why do business leaders struggle with the concept of sales? I would say that there's a few reasons. One is from an entrepreneurial perspective. If someone's got a product or a service and they know it helps, one, they have no idea of how to sell, period. So they can try and wing it, or they can get advice from numerous people and spend a lot of monies and not getting much results, which is detrimental towards the business. I've noticed that some organizations, they know that they've got to sell, but sometimes they don't want to invest, or there's an existing process in place and they go along with it. So that may include buying lists and working through those lists and hoping that something sticks. And through personal experience, that doesn't work. And I've seen and met quite a few people that are VC funded, and what they actually do is they enjoy the product, but they enjoy spending the money. And instead of growing the sales team, it's like, where should we go for lunch today? Where did you buy your suit? Blimey, guys, you've got to grow the business. You've got to invest. Yeah. Even if you want to grow the sales team, you've got to have someone in place that can manage the sales team. Now, I was going to say, I've come across clients that had moved away from social media and their existing network and wanting to grow their business. And when it came to training them and outsourcing my services, they didn't want to invest in a commercial director. They either wanted me to manage a sales team, or they wanted to manage a sales team themselves. But when I put it to them, well, how are you going to measure their success rates? How are you going to set KPIs? How are you going to measure all these things? They had no idea and they weren't interested. They just wanted a quick sale with their high value solution. I said, your solution is not a quick, let's have a meeting and you lot sign it off. The solution that you offer requires numerous meetings and a lot of buy-ins from various partners. So it varies with who you're actually, or who I'm actually speaking to in the business world when it comes to sales and why they struggle. They all struggle with different things at different stages.
So I just want to pick up an element of there in terms of that struggling bit, and also not taking ownership of the sort of sales process as leaders, and I think that's super important as well. But something that Daniel said was quite pertinent, and I haven't got it as part of our questions and thought about it, and I appreciate this may be a separate podcast in all itself. But we're talking about this mindset element, and in the sense of, obviously, if you're naturally extrovert, that's probably a good element of a good starting place in terms of being able to sell effectively. But most of us come from a scientific or technocrat type background as well. And so therefore, as Daniel rightly points out, most of the time as founders, and I found a number of businesses, you come up with the ideas and proposition as well and everything else. And I want us to talk about that as well, because that's really super important. But ultimately, we struggle to convey the concept or the idea or what solution it's solving to customers. Tell me about that change, and I think probably, Daddy, you can speak to this for more than anybody else, because obviously you've done that similar road. In terms of that mindset change, where you basically says, I'm sorry, I can't be stuck up behind the desk. I've got to be able to sell this concept, this thing. And creation at the time when we first got involved together, was way beyond. I mean, when you talked about AI, people will say, "What AI? What are you talking about AI? All that type of stuff." It was complete anathema to a lot of people. So explain, Daniel, how you were able to change your mindset to really convey the proposition in a favorable way.
Well, I think that it's definitely about understanding how can we effectively serve those customers well. Like we know that when we've got the customer as a customer, we want to be able to serve them well and to be delighted, but we actually want them to be delighted through the sales process. That is something that delights them. If we actually see that we have this goal to make a difference to the lives of the people we work with, we could actually achieve that even if they didn't become customers. If we actually engage them in a meaningful sales process, that means that we actually have to care about them more, care about the customer more than we care about closing the deal. I had somebody come and do an internship with us, and they were doing some outreach to a potential client, and this was years ago, and they said to me, "Okay, I really feel like we could help this customer, but I'm getting nothing from them, and I want to follow up with them, but how do I know when I'm just going to become really annoying?" And I said to him, like, imagine that this customer is a friend of yours and you've got something good for them, like something that's going to really be valuable for them. Like, you'll know if it's a friend, how much to keep in touch with them, and how much, when just to leave it alone, and imagine them as a friend rather than some transactional kind of thing. And I think it's that mindset. It's thinking about it in that kind of way. Actually, well, honestly, one of the things that I have been doing with my team is really focusing on, we have a set of core values at Creation: love, service, and excellence. And love, is how we see that needs to run through right the way through our business. So actually, what does it look like then if we put love into sales? What if we actually can actually choose to love people who are going to become future customers? Then we're going to really care for them before we get into the sales transaction.
Yeah. Again, it's that mindset of that. Okay, this is somebody, a normal person. They're not, some high voltage individual. They are a real person. Get to know them, build relationship, and invest in them as a person rather than as an entity, as a transactional element. I like that as well. Oliver, you want to add to that mindset piece as well?
Yeah,
that's an important part of what you do in terms of coaching.
I was going to say what Daniel said actually changed my whole sales system.
Brilliant.
Because previously, when I used to reach out and used to work for hardware vendors and security vendors, they were all I saw everything as a transaction. Yeah. I've got to hit the targets. Mm-hmm. I've got to get out and sell. However, when I moved over from pushing hardware equipment for security vendors and moved into information security, one day we had an ex-CEO of Adecco working with us. He partnered up with a firm. And he said, "Oliver, I've got to admire you." So I asked him why. He said, "The amount of energy you have and the calls you make, it's amazing." So, "Oh, thank you very much." And then he said to me, he asked me a question: "Do you know how to have more conversations?" I said, "Well, more numbers, more phone calls." He said, "No." He said, "You've got to talk to everyone as if you really want to help them and as if you care for them.
There you go.
Talk to someone like a human. Don't pitch. Don't say, I want to book an appointment. Talk to someone like a human. Really want to help them, whether you can or not. Really want to help you." So from a day where I was potentially making up to 80 calls a day, the number of calls dropped down to under 30. Then afterwards, the number of calls dropped down to 20 to 25, and the number of calls they got smaller and smaller, because I was having actual conversations with real people, because I actually wanted to help them, not sell to them. And the beauty of this approach was, when you actually get to know someone, whether or not you can help them or not, it becomes irrelevant, because they have friends who are in the same industry, and their friends might be struggling with something, and they don't know the ins and outs. But as a human, you're a nice person. I can talk to you. You understand me, and let me see if you can actually help my friend out. Yeah. And business grows from that.
Oliver, can I ask you about this? Because that's what's interesting is you talked about KPI, or you talked about numbers. you were making 80 calls a day, and then after you started
Yeah.
really focusing on caring for the customer, the number of calls went down. So, but you could have had a KPI that says like, I need to make 80 calls a day. You're hitting that number, it's less fruitful, and you actually were able to find that you reduced the number of calls you made, and they were potentially more effective, a more effective outcome.
Correct. Yes, because one of the KPIs is something called a conversations. So it's how many conversations can you have, and you'd be thinking, well, you want activity, you want number of calls, you want conversations, you want meetings, but which one do you want? Because if I can book, 10 meetings a day and have 10 conversations, does that mean I don't hit my target all of a sudden? Now, the scary thing is, some firms actually work like this. They're not necessarily interested in how many meetings you get, which turns into dollars. It's how many calls do you make?
Yeah.
And from a sales stroke KPI perspective, I throw that out the window. It's like, no, it's not number of calls.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of firms that still abide by that, and they're very strict when it comes to number of calls. I'm thinking, no. Let's get meetings. Let's have conversations, because that's how you grow the business. Now, I found the smaller firms, the private firms, will look after their staff, their sales staff, and say, yes, let's go that way. But the bigger firms that float on the stock market, it's all about activity, so we can show our shareholders that we're very active. So it's a strange one.
Yeah, coming back to that point, in fact, and there's so many rabbit holes I want to go out under anyway. But anyway, let me just be focused here. Let me focus. Sales. It's certainly around this whole element of the one. I want to talk about the message, but also about ideal clients. Because you remember at the same time, and I think it was interesting in what you're saying, 80 calls, but ultimately, you're down to, below 20 or whatever it is. And we had the discussion as well, Daniel, as well. So I want to answer your question, because I know that's really pertinent for you. It's identifying who your ideal client is and ensuring that the message that you have coincides with solving the pain of that client. And so take me through that process in your organization, Daniel, because again, like Oliver's trying to make the point, is that if you're clear about your ideal client and you do the work to identify them, it may take a little bit more time, but once you've had that initial conversations, you're more likely to have more fruitful discussions rather than just doing like I said, getting a big list, telephone book or whatever it is, and away you go.
Well, and I will just say, you talk about telephone, but my first ever sales job when I left school, I was one of those people who phones people up in the evening and asks them if they want to buy double glazing, and it was literally that. It was, we sat in a booth in a room full of little booths, really smoky. Most people were smoking in the room. It was choking, and they tore a page out of the phone book. I had to explain to some young graduates recently, like, this is what we used to have, a phone book. It had everyone's name and phone number in it and address, and you just work through the number, call the number, offer them the deal. No, next one, and you got so much abuse. You were calling people up during their relax. Anyone prepares you for any else experience. So numbers get them. I think that when you asked about, I think maybe we find the right people. So much opportunity to learn, to use digital media to learn and see how people are interacting. And you can actually, when you get into a call with somebody at the right time, you can know, what have they been interacting with on your website? What have they been reading? What have they been accessing? What are they interested in? You can also do your homework and find out, what sort of state are they in the market in their own process, to understand, are they likely to be an ideal customer? We do have an ideal customer persona. We know, we will know before we reach out to or get in touch with a potential customer. There are a certain load of criteria in terms of the kind of company they work for, the sort of products they might be responsible for. We serve the pharmaceutical industry. What stage of the life cycle are those products at? What sort of role is this person in? What's their remit? And I think understanding those things just really helps us to narrow down from potentially millions of customers down to a much smaller data set. And then I think that it's not, the call needs to come at the right time for them when they're ready. And I think that what we've been learning recently is that buyer behaviors, I think post pandemic, have changed quite a lot, and a lot of and there's data out from consultancies that shows that professional services buyers, if they're going to spend $100,000 on a project, which they might be, they might spend 20 to 40 hours doing their own research before they want to get onto a call. And that's really helpful to know, because we can serve them through digital media and making sure they've got access to the right resources along the way. And then when they're ready for a call, we know that we can have a really helpful conversation that serves them more as they look to find out the right answer. I'm always conscious that the buyer, there's so much at stake for them too. If you're about to spend that kind of money on behalf of your employer, you don't want to get that wrong. And wanting to serve them and helping them to make the right decision is really important.
I like that as well, in terms of serving them as well. Oliver, do you want to just talk that through as well from your perspective?
Yeah. So with some of the clients that I work with and have worked with and previous experience, sometimes when it comes to the sales process, there's quite a few people involved. So it's not just, thank God, it isn't just one person signing off. Otherwise, heads can easily roll. But listening to them, getting an understanding, talking to the relevant stakeholders is a big plus. Otherwise, there have been times in the past where clients have got sign off from their own clients, and it doesn't necessarily tick all the boxes of what they're looking to solve. So it varies dramatically. And I would say with high value services, working alongside the client and really understanding what it is that they are struggling with, aligning it with your offering or potentially tweaking your offering to meet their needs. In the old days, I remember various hardware vendors and IT security vendors would change the needs of the client to suit the product offering that they were pushing, which I didn't agree with, but that was a big one. It was, we can't necessarily tick all their boxes, but let's change their problems so that it fits with our solution, which to a degree is a bit like the 1980s salesman that will lie through their teeth to get the sale, which is very different today though.
No, sure. And just for both of you, really, how critical is this value proposition? Now, for those who, please, it's the only fancy word, we're pretty sort of management jargon free in these type of podcasts. But the value proposition really for me is in relation to sell on value rather than price. In other words, what are you adding to what your services or your products are in the marketplace as well? And excuse me. And so what is quite clear as well is that if you're not able to articulate really well that value and difference you're making to that person's life in terms of solving their issues, then that's a big issue. And how do you do that in terms of, when you think about your organizations or your coaching people to look at that, in terms of, how do you craft that value proposition to ensure that it's relevant and, more importantly, differentiates you from your competitors? Because that's the key thing, really. How does it set yourself apart as an organization going beyond that? So I'll take that back to Oliver first and then back to you, Daniel.
So from a personal perspective of how we work at Reconsultancy, it's not, we don't necessarily offer a one shoe size fits all, because we do realize that no two companies are alike. So when it comes to offering our products and services, we don't necessarily just let them go at the end of a duration. We stay with them to ensure that basically they are able to go off on their own and to start growing their sales and sales teams, etc. So what differentiates us is clients and ex-clients, they've got my number. So if ever they're struggling with something, they always pick up the phone, and they've always got the support there. Plus there are various tools online for them to actually fall back on. So from a value proposition perspective, as this is my own business, I can't afford just to pick people up, drop them, and move on to the next client. I'd rather have a small select group of clients that I work with closely, watch them grow their business, and always be that person there that they always turn to. Sure. With other training organizations, they don't necessarily get that. They go through a course, through a process, and that's it. Whether they've picked it up or not, good luck. Whereas I've still got people that I've been working with. I started working with 5 years ago. That from time to time will pick up the phone. We'll have a conversation. We'll talk about sales because that's one of the reasons why they've called me. And then they'll ask for pointers. And there have been times where I will sit in on various calls, even though we're talking 5 years ago. So when you get referrals like that, and some of those clients become friends, so it goes beyond business. They become friends. That's something that you really can't buy, tell the truth. And again, with everything that we've been saying, including Daniel, you've got to really want to help people.
Yeah.
And it's not just the transaction. So that's
big
part of it.
No, sure. And obviously, that's super important. The relationship underpins everything. But in the initial aspect, the return on investment is the one that is a sort of hook that gets the fish in that respect as well. And how you articulate that in terms of your proposition so that people realize that, this is value for money. It's not, your price may be 20, 30% above your competitors, but at least, you know what you're going to get in for the long term. Daniel, do you want to speak a little bit to that?
It's a really good one. It's something we've been working through recently, actually, because for a long time, we know that our clients really do value the relationship. And in fact, we had a new senior member of our marketing team come in on an interim basis 6 months ago. And they said, the first thing I want to do is I want to interview some of your clients and find out what they value about creation. And he did these interviews, and the feedback that came back, he asked them a question: if creation, the clients, they understood the technicalities of the service we provided. They understood that we had, this incredible source of data that we can bring in from the healthcare professionals, social media conversations. It's part of the research we do for them. They understood that. They understood the differentiators. But actually, when he asked them if creation was no longer here, what would you miss? They all said the people. It's the relationships. It's the people.
Yeah.
I think, it's what Oliver said, that value that they place in the relationships is really, really key. But when it comes to making, if you like, a first sale to a client, they get the relationship in the sales process, right? They're getting that, but they still need to understand, what actually is the value. They're going to spend a lot of money, potentially on a piece of, insights-led consulting, which is what we provide them with. They need to understand that the real, the real differentiator, the decade plus of investment we've made into AI technologies to develop the right kind of insights. So we do have a lot of stuff around that. It's a balance of not getting too technical about it initially, but seeing what's the real value of that to them. Why is this different from what anyone else can do? How are we going to get them more rapidly to the perspectives of their customers, which is what we're bringing them, effectively market research. And what's the real value? What do they do with that? It's understanding, the stories of how other clients of ours have been able to use the insights we've developed to do something innovative, to do something new and achieve a better outcome. I had feedback from a client who'd, increased their share of voice from 6% to exceeding the market leader that had 70% of the share of voice in their field in medical devices. And getting those kind of numbers on it, a great story is to be able to tell clients, and this is the kind of benefit that clients have had. That's valuable. But it still comes back to the reason they come back to us is the relationships, is the people, is understanding that they love working with our people. And I think which comes back to this, the sales question of actually, do we genuinely care before we sell them the product?
Yeah.
No, good. And I've got an example as well that may help to embellish the conversation. I was talking to a client, and they were looking to completely reorganize themselves from the traditional high street type recruitment company to more online as well. So it's a little bit of an investment. Wasn't quite sure how to do it. I had a couple of people in my team who were able to help and assist that, and so we put a proposal together. And he came back, and he was and ahhing, and I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, speak to my clients. Right? I'll give you a couple of contacts, have a chat with them, and whatever it is. And he said, okay. So he went away, and I had a call from one of my clients, and he said, oh, by the way, I spoke to one of your prospects or whatever, or somebody who was thinking of doing some work with you. I said, oh, okay. How'd it go? I said, okay. I said, oh, what did they say? And he said, well, they were talking about it, and we told them all the things that you did for us and all the rest, and how the relationship was important, blah, blah, blah. and he said to them, okay, so what are you looking to do then? He said, well, we're because they're a bit expensive, aren't they? I said, oh, and this going on like this. So the guy said, okay, all right, so is that a problem? I said, well, and the guy said, look, the bottom line is that if you can, I'm sure you find somebody else who can do exactly what you probably want to do, etc. And then maybe 20, 30% cheaper. And that's fine. That's whatever it is. But if you want to grow by 5%, I'm sure these guys can probably help you. But if you want to grow by 10, 20 or 30%, I think you need Wayne in his team. And we had the deal the 2 days later. So the point is right, what is that value? You know, what's the return on investment ultimately? And some people are really nervous about understanding that element, that piece. But as you said, rightly point out, Daniel, it's, you know, that's going to be the bit that sort of catches people at the early stages as well. But 100%, it's a relationship bit that's going to sustain the customer. And so let me just segue that really nicely in terms of relationship in relation to the sort of processes and the systems and the things that we need to do, because there's an element, and you may want to speak to this, guys, in relation to farming and hunting. All right. Hunting in terms of getting the client, getting them into the door, you know, shoehorning them in, whatever it is, you know, but you want the right client, you want the proper clients. But then there's elements of nurture, farming, cultivating, building a relationship, ensuring that these are people that you have for life. And too many companies get people, shoehorn them into the business, and then when they drop out, you know, oh well, lost another client or whatever it is, and you get this feast and famine element coming through into the business as well. So speak to this element of having the systems in place to have both hunters and farming sales tactics in the organization to allow you to have a sustainable sales process going forward. Oliver, you want to pick that one up, please?
That's an interesting one. The reason why I say that's an interesting one is quite a few companies that I've spoken with and work with, they have so many farmers. And the smaller businesses, say, for example, the recruitment firms, there aren't any hunters there. So the business has actually been brought in by the owner of the firm. And then the clients are then handed off to account managers that just farm and nurture the relationship. So during my time in Asia, I realized that there was a demand for hunters. People didn't like picking up the phone. People were scared. And for me, coming from London, coming from the city, I thought, you know, you just pick up the phone, you just bring in a business, that's it. But I didn't realize how big of a skill it was. When I moved back to the UK, and I thought, I don't necessarily want to work for another firm and do this. Let's see what the market's like. I realized with plenty of some of the smaller recruitment firms, that was their model. The business owner had all the accounts, would bring in all the business through their relationships over 10, 15, 20 years plus, and give all those accounts to the account managers that would just farm for business. It's a completely different skill set, and 100%. Usually it's completely different skill. And farmers themselves, they don't want to hunt. They're adamant. Usually they're adamant. I didn't sign up for this. This is what I want to do. So getting people across the line to become hunters, it's given them the motivation. Yeah. It's with some firms, I would say, let them continue farming, but set aside an hour a day to hunt, see what it's like, give them that experience, but also give them the process. Yeah. Give them the process so they don't get screamed, shout, and abused down the phone. Mm-hmm. That's the last thing anyone wants. Yeah. But I have found now there seems to be a lot more farmers. Quite a few companies I've spoken to, they're all expecting that inbound flux.
That's right.
From media. And I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily work there. And if you look at your competition has outgrown you and bigger than you because they have hunters. Not only are they relying on inbound inquiries, they're actually going out and talking to the people that you want to talk to.
Yeah, I love
then
that.
Again, it's how do you convert? How do you convert those people that it sounds good, but how do we convert them into let's try it? Now, I had been very cocky in the past, whereas when I first started this, I asked some prospects, who do you want to speak to? I will get you talking to them. At the end, there's a promise that you'll sign up. So some people, they wanted to talk to Microsoft or Apple. I thought, okay, I'll arrange a call. This will just prove that I can actually put my foot where my mouth is, and I don't just talk the talk, I'll walk the walk. And yeah, they signed up right in the early stages, but that was a firm that had grown to a certain size. They wanted to continue growing, but the owner, she could only bring in so much work herself as an individual. She wanted her team to become hunters.
Yeah.
So it's they've both got their strengths and weaknesses. If you're a hunter, I would say if you're a hunter, you can easily be a farmer. Easily be a farmer, but not necessarily the other way around.
Because I like that take.
Petrified to pick
No,
up the
no,
phone.
thanks for that wisdom as well. And conscious that we've got time to really talk about that a little bit more, because I mean that the sort of the qualities of an individual who is an hunter and the qualities of somebody to who have the farming, and more importantly, where's the business at that moment in time in terms of where's your first sales hire sometimes, whatever it is. So Daniel, do you want to speak to some of that's it?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think that the challenge is that sometimes the hunter analogy can, that in itself, put people off, right? And you talked about fear. There can be this kind of fear about it, and I think that's where this idea of putting love into sales, that still applies when you're doing that. Direct outreach, when you're reaching out to people, when you're going out and finding them. As you say, Oliver, to sit and wait and think, well, everything's just going to come in is maybe a bit naive. And especially in the early days, I think, as a company becomes established and develops reputation, and you've got some great past clients who come back and are loyal and will refer you, and you've got a reputation online, and perhaps people are seeing the social media content you put out. We actually get, I get quite a number of inbound leads, just people approaching me because I put content out on LinkedIn, for example, or whatever, and someone says, I saw that thing, and made me think about some need we've got, or whatever. So I think that maybe that comes in time and becomes more natural, but the need to go out and be proactive, I think you can still put that love. Well, obviously, you can still put that love and care into that, and make it really effective in that way. So we actually we encourage all of our team to play an active role in that kind of activity, not necessarily doing cold calls to people, but reach out to people with something that's going to benefit them. Think about what's that person's need likely to be. How can you serve them with something useful? What could you share with them? And all our clients will know that they, they'll be receiving things from different team members. Even if they're not clients yet, I may speak to someone and they'll say, "Oh, I heard from your colleagues, so and so, who sent me this great white paper or this webinar invitation or whatever." And I think I try and encourage all the teams to play a role in that, because actually partly it's overcoming that fear of that. I think sometimes when you think about that hunting salesperson, many people can be afraid of that and feel like, I couldn't ever do that. But actually, you can bring yourself to it. And I get that there are different strengths and different characters of people. There are people who suit the farming analogy more. But I think even those people can step up and reach out kindly to somebody who might become a future customer. And that can be really effective, I think, because when they bring themselves to that, they can be authentic. They don't have to pretend to be something they're not. And they might, they can bring that caring attitude to it and say, look, actually, here's something where I think we could serve you with this, and see if the client engages. That can be, if it's timed right and it's the right message, then actually you'll be starting to have a conversation with them.
And absolutely, I think in that respect, when individuals sometimes, when they sort of don't want to make that call or don't want to make that, it's getting over that barrier of fear that that they're going to be rejected and etc. And we can all be rejected in life as well. And I think that bit at the beginning where we talked about mindset is just realizing that, look, let's have a conversation. If you take it from the simplest perspective, let's have a conversation. We have something that we believe is of value and would help you and help your team. Let's have a chat. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. It's cool. No harm done. I'll go into the next person who wants that. And look at it from that perspective, rather than anything else. Rather than, oh my gosh, I don't want to pick up the phone because just in case I may get the wrong person, or what do I say to the secretary or the gatekeeper, or whatever. So yeah, it's clearly that mindset which is important. I'm conscious of our time, folks. If you have any questions, let's put some questions in if you want to as well. If not, we just continue to rumble on. We've got so much to cover as well. So yeah, use the chat to do that, and I'll pick up in the studio, and we'll be able to hopefully, if there's appropriate, then we'll share it onto the panel as well. But just keeping things rolling as well. tell me how organizations should start, really. How can you put in place an effective sales system that helps the business to move forward? What should you do? And Dan, you want to pick that one up first of all?
I was hoping you go to Oliver first. He's the We're still 26 years into the business. I'm still
£1 million business. So come on, let's
figure it out. Well,
Let's-
I think that okay. How do you start from somewhere? I think it starts with understanding really understanding who are your customers and how you're going to serve them. What is their actual need? And you talked about this, Wayne, like that value proposition. How do you get to that? And you've got to understand. You've got to understand them enough. It's really getting to know them, listen to them. I mean, in today's day and age, you can listen to customers so well. What are they posting online? What are they saying? What are they doing? And figure out, what are the gaps for them, and actually make sure that what you've got is going to address those needs. I think that's where it starts, because out of that you can really develop what is a good value proposition for them. How could you serve them more? And then start having some conversations. I think if you're really starting out, then have some of those exploratory conversations. If they're good conversations, they'll lead to sales anyway. But approach the sales from that point of view. I've got as much to learn from you as I may have to, or maybe more to learn from you than I may have to actually bring you. But let me, would you be willing to have that conversation so I can learn? I think a lot of people would be really happy to have that conversation, and and that's a good way to get started. Just to start off with, I think.
Yeah, good, love that, Oliver, the expert.
Yeah. I agree with what Daniel was saying. However, breaking it down into a granular level, it would be identifying who's the person that you need to speak to. That's it. So if you focus on a particular niche and an industry, so you don't shotgun the market, you focus on one niche, and then you target all of them in that particular niche. Find out who it is that you need to speak to. And then when you have those conversations, rather than having that value add, find out what they're struggling with, because what you will find out is that all of them will be struggling with the same thing in that particular niche. So the more conversations you have, the more that you learn, you begin to pick up terminology, which then to a degree makes you be like a subject matter expert. When an organization is struggling with something, you're the main man to go to, or you're the main person to go to, because you know exactly what it is they're struggling, and all their competitors are struggling with at the same time.
Yeah.
So then once you identify who the person is that you need to speak to, it's then figuring out from a sales perspective, how do you actually reach them? Because sometimes quite a few clients that I've worked with, their prospects and their ideal clients aren't usually online. They're not active on social media. So they've got to go out and reach them and get them on the phone to have the conversation. But then it's finding out, not only do I need to speak to a particular person in a particular department, but how do I get through to them? Am I going to be blocked? Are they always busy? Are they open to a conversation? Should I actually be speaking to someone else? So there are a variety of elements within the actual sales process. So from the high level, Daniel's spot on. But then when it comes to implementing it, there's got to be some type of strategy there. Okay, how are we going to get in to this particular organization? Are we going to try social media? Are we going to try emails? Or, like our competitors, are we just going to pick up the phone and get through to them? Now, what I will say is when there are gatekeepers, I usually tell prospects and clients, gatekeepers are an omen, because the reason why is a lot of your competition will most likely give up. But there are so many ways around the gatekeeper to get through to the decision maker that you're after. And when you do get through to them, they are actually going to be a lot more willing to have a conversation with you, because they're not being bombarded by your competitors. Yep. So there's a lot to think of when it comes to this.
Right. No, 100%. A couple of questions I really want to try and shoehorn into our discussion. And again, I say, if there's any questions, then let me know. I've got a few folk on the line as well. So, but two quick ones. And first one is about, the classic, should a business owner sell or leave it to a professional with a black book? I think we've asked a little bit about that before. And I know we all got a t-shirt on having somebody that we feel has got a black book, and come into our organization and they're completely failed in the process. Yeah. Well, certainly in my case, yes. Oliver, do you want to pick that one up?
That's a really good question, that one. I remember in the days when when I was working in the city and people would come and go, they were always going to come with a black book. But were they ever out of the office? No, they weren't. They're always in the office. It's like, well, hold on. Well, what's happened? I thought you were bringing all these clients along with you.
There you go.
I'd say it should really be a combination.
Mm.
If the founder's going to get involved of the company, then the conversation that they have with a prospect is going to be very different from one of their sales execs.
Yeah.
So I would say, from a leader perspective, I would say that the founder, it's good to actually watch them get involved, go out and meet the clients, lead by example.
Mm.
If you're growing a business and you want to bring people on with a black book, there is a trial period, 3 months. But sometimes I've seen with my own eyes, people take clients with them. So when they're working for a particular company, they've got the relationship with the clients, not just the business, not just the brand, but they themselves have the relationship. So when they move, they bring clients with them. So, I would say you've got to ask a lot more qualifying questions if you want to bring someone over with a black book.
No, I agree with that.
What do you do other than sell to them? Do you ever meet up with them? Do you know their family? Do you know their kids? Because it then becomes personal. It becomes a relationship, not just a transaction.
Mm.
And at the same time, you've delivered.
Yeah.
Good point about having somebody who's the hero, there, and everything relies on them, and then they move on to something else. We always try and make our sales process teamwork. Always to have 2 people on the call. I mean, usually one's coaching the other, one's learning from the other, or one's capturing it, and then they can have a debrief and whatever. And I think it's so valuable. I was on a sales call yesterday. So, I'm still doing sales. If I ever enter a season where I think I'm the one bringing in all our new business, there's a problem, right? Because now that's only so scalable, and that's going to be a problem. So I definitely want to be coaching other people. I brought a colleague into a call, and honestly, I really flunked the sales call. I just say, if my client is watching this, they brought in a senior leader. It was the key person. And they asked me some direct questions about outcomes on some work we'd done before. And I didn't have it to hand. And I'd gone in thinking I'm going to coach my colleague in how we do a great sales call. And I came out and I was like, oh man, I really do that. And I said, let's have a debrief. How do you think it goes? And he said, yeah, you probably could have. I wonder if you could have listened a bit more to the customer. And I was like, yeah, you're so right. And it was a disaster. I felt really humbled because I was like, but I think actually being in with someone else, it always allows that. There's always things to learn, always things to coaching each other. So I think for me, growing a team of people who can do that is key to it. But I can't ever see a day when I'm not passionately engaged in some way in sales.
And I think also at the same time as a business leader, how do you know whether someone's pulling the wool over your eyes if you've never done the process yourself? And that's the issue. You abdicate responsibility to somebody else. And then, 3 months later, they say, oh, well, if I had this and I have a marketing team, and if I had an inbound, team that gave me the leads, and if the website was working, if your social media was whatever, blah, 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 and they gave you a whole load of excuses, and probably all valid. But ultimately, again, if you don't understand yourself, the process of sales and how that, you win clients and actually keep clients, then it's difficult to challenge them, and to sort of push back and say, well, if you did this and did that, whatever it is. So I do like the element of the leader understanding, getting involved in the sales process, and therefore it provides leadership and also a sort of an intelligent customer to the sales process when things go a bit wrong, a bit pitong, then you've got some insight in terms of why that may be as well. And finally, as well, I'm conscious of our time just driving away. There's that systematic element as well. We didn't talk about systems and processes, but systemizing sales, systemizing our process, understanding how do you get customers is super important, in terms of, if you won a client, or how did you win them? What was the process to achieve that? Because if you can replicate that, more or less, you're going to replicate it for other businesses as well. And understanding that from an in-depth process, and I'm sure, Oliver, you're able to help clients to do that is really important. One final question that I want to really just brave is the elephant in the room: social media. the mother of all so-called social inbound sales lead generation. You can get all these YouTube saying, "Oh, use social media and do this and do that," whatever it is. What's your view in terms of where social media comes into the context of sales? And clearly, it's important, and I'm not saying it's not important, but where does it fit into the whole context of sales and how the company portrays itself and how it gets leads and how it retains customers as well? And 30 seconds each. Oliver, you want to kick that one off, and then Daniel.
Sure. I would say social media is a nice to have. It's not a definite. And the reason why is because I'm a firm believer that if you want to grow your business, you've got to pick up the dog and bone, the phone, go out there and speak to them. And the reason why is because that's exactly what your competitors are doing. Don't get me wrong, though. You might get some inbound leads and some business that will easily cover the time spent on social media, but I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket on social media. It's a good to have. That's my firm belief.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Daniel?
I agree, Oliver. And I think that there are clearly some businesses that are digital only online businesses, that are selling online. But for most businesses, as Oliver says, social media is an add-on to that. But for me, I would say to start with social media, use it as a listening tool, use it to learn about your customers. And I appreciate, Oliver, that there'll be some companies for whom their clients aren't on social media. For me, in a professional services company, I think that, a lot of our clients are on social media, so we can learn about them and their world. And that is the most valuable thing social media is the opportunity to learn.
Perfect. Right. Well, I think we're done, folks. And thank you again for attending. Just to give you some sort of elements that may help to just help you to understand some of the sort of roundabout element. Oh, let me just go that back on there. I'm sorry. So in relation to what I feel are probably some of the key things that we've picked up from today, really. So again, it's a whole element of identifying your ideal clients, keeping them, nurturing them, the whole importance of relationship that undergirds that, and make sure you understand the distinction between farming and hunting. Not all hunters can be farmers, and not all farmers can be hunters, but it's more or less the other way around at times, as Oliver said. And then have that systemized sales process to allow you to keep track of performance and correspondence, and more importantly, cement the relationship that you have with each one of your customers as well. Thank you, Daniel. Hold on, let me just quickly finish off in terms of how you can get hold of the guys going forward as well. Obviously, we've got some coaching and stuff that you can add aspects to. Contact us. All this stuff is in my book as well, 10 Commands of Business Growth. You can get on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. But Daniel and Oliver, they're all active on LinkedIn. Please hunt them down, speak to them, and contact them. I'm sure they're lovely to have to talk to you going forward again. Thank you. Our time is done. Thank you, gentlemen. Really do appreciate your time today. I really do appreciate you being involved in what we're trying to do as well, and just give that information and expertise to businesses today, and appreciate our time together. We're done, guys. Bless you all. Have a good day. And speak to you soon.